In 216 BC, at a place called Cannae in southern Italy, the Roman army suffered the worst defeat in its history. 2 Roman consuls, 8 legions, approximately 70,000 soldiers, surrounded by a Carthaginian force half their size, led by a general named Hannibal. By the end of that single afternoon, between 50 and 70,000 Romans lay dead. It remains one of the highest single-day casualty counts in the history of warfare. Most armies, after a defeat like that, would have negotiated peace. Rome sent another army, and then another. And 17 years later, Rome had destroyed Carthage, absorbed Spain, and was well on its way to controlling the entire Mediterranean world. This is the story of the Roman war machine, and why it was not just an army, but a system so well designed that it kept winning even when it lost. Every ancient civilization had an army. Most of them were variations on the same idea. Gather the strongest men, give them weapons, point them at the enemy. Rome did something different. Rome treated war as an engineering problem. The Roman legion was not just a fighting force. It was a self-contained system, capable of marching, fighting, building, and sustaining itself in hostile territory indefinitely. Consider what a Roman legion carried into the field. Each soldier, called a legionary, carried approximately 40 kilograms of equipment. Not just weapons and armor, but tools, pickaxes, shovels, stakes for building fortifications, cooking equipment, enough rations for several days. Every night, regardless of whether a battle had been fought or was expected, the Roman army built a fortified camp. Walls, trenches, towers. A camp that could house thousands of soldiers, laid out in the same pattern every single time, so that any soldier could find his position in total darkness. This was not cautious. This was systematic. An army that builds a fortified camp every night does not get surprised. It does not panic. It creates a controlled environment and fights on its own terms. The second thing Rome did differently was professionalization. In the early Republic, Roman soldiers were farmers who fought in summer and went home for harvest. By the time of the late Republic and the professional reforms of General Gaius Marius in 107 BC, soldiers were full-time professionals, recruited for years of service, paid a salary, trained continuously, and given a reason to fight that extended beyond one campaign season. A professional soldier who is trained for 3 years and fought in 2 campaigns is a fundamentally different instrument than a farmer who picked up a shield last month. Rome understood this, and it built its empire on that understanding. The Roman legion at its peak consisted of approximately 5,000 men, organized into units called cohorts, centuries, and maniples, a flexible structure that allowed the legion to operate as a single mass or break into smaller units depending on the terrain and the enemy. This flexibility was the key innovation that most ancient armies lacked. The armies of Persia, of the Greek city-states, of most ancient civilizations, relied primarily on one formation, a mass of soldiers pushing against another mass. Whoever broke first lost. The outcome was determined largely by numbers and nerve. The Roman legion could adapt. If the terrain was open and flat, the legion could lock shields and advance as an unstoppable wall. If the terrain was broken or wooded, cohorts could operate independently, flanking, encircling, pursuing. If the enemy had cavalry superiority, the legion could form a defensive square. If the enemy was fortified, the legion became an engineering force, building siege towers, battering rams, trenches, and ramps with professional precision. The primary weapon of the Roman legionary was not the sword. It was the pilum, a heavy javelin approximately 2 meters long
with a metal shaft designed to bend on impact. A soldier would throw the pilum just before closing with the enemy. If it hit a shield, the bent metal shaft made the shield almost impossible to use effectively, forcing the enemy to drop it or fight with a weight attached to their arm. Then the legionary closed in with the gladius, a short, wide stabbing sword designed for close-quarters fighting in the tight press of battle. The sequence was not improvised. It was trained, drilled, repeated thousands of times before any battle occurred. Roman training was deliberately harder than battle. Soldiers trained with weapons twice the weight of their actual equipment. They marched 30 kilometers per day in full gear, regularly, as routine. The Roman writer Vegetius recorded that Roman soldiers were expected to be able to run, jump, swim, and carry loads that would break most men. By the time a Roman soldier faced a real enemy, he had already experienced conditions harder than what most enemies could impose.
An army fights, a system sustains. What made Rome truly exceptional was not the legion itself, it was everything that supported the legion. Roads. The Roman road network at its peak covered over 80,000 kilometers across 3 continents. These were not paths or tracks. They were engineered surfaces, layered gravel, sand, and paving stones, built straight wherever terrain permitted, maintained continuously, passable in all weather. A Roman army could move faster than any enemy expected, because its roads meant it did not slow down in mud, could not be blocked by rivers in most locations, and always knew exactly how far it was from the next supply depot. Supply depots, another Roman innovation. Fixed logistical bases, positioned throughout the empire, stocked with grain, weapons, and equipment. A Roman army on campaign was never more than a few days' march from resupply. An army that does not run out of food does not have to choose between fighting and eating. Engineering corps. Every Roman legion included specialists in construction, demolition, bridge building, and siege warfare. When Julius Caesar needed to cross the Rhine River in 55 BC, a river considered a natural barrier that no army had crossed quickly, his engineers built a wooden bridge across it in 10 days. Caesar crossed, demonstrated Roman power on the other side, and crossed back. Then he had the bridge dismantled. The bridge was a message as much as an engineering achievement. Rome can go anywhere. There are no natural barriers to Rome. And then there was the Roman approach to conquered peoples. Most ancient empires extracted from conquered territories, took tribute, took slaves, took resources, and left. Rome did something different. It absorbed. Conquered peoples could become Roman citizens. Their local elites could join the Roman Senate. Their soldiers could serve in the Roman army and earn citizenship. Their infrastructure was connected to the Roman road network. Their legal disputes were settled by Roman law. This was not generosity, it was strategy. An empire where the conquered want to stay Roman is far cheaper to maintain than an empire where every garrison is surrounded by people waiting to revolt. The Roman war machine was not theoretical. It was tested against the hardest opponents in the ancient world, and it adapted and won. Against Hannibal and Carthage, Rome lost battle after battle in the early stages of the Second Punic War. Trebia, Lake Trasimene, Cannae. 3 catastrophic defeats in 3 years, and Rome kept going. It raised new armies. It changed strategy, avoiding open battle with Hannibal, cutting off his supply lines, fighting his allies instead. And eventually, Rome produced its own general of equivalent genius in Scipio Africanus, who took the war to Carthage's home territory in North Africa and won at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC. The system had outlasted the genius. Against the Greek kingdoms of the Eastern Mediterranean, the Seleucids, the Macedonians,
the various successor states to Alexander's empire. Rome encountered sophisticated armies that used war elephants, heavy cavalry, and the Macedonian phalanx, one of the most formidable infantry formations ever devised. Rome lost individual engagements. Then it studied what had gone wrong, adjusted its formations and tactics, and won the wars. Against the Germanic tribes of northern Europe, arguably the most physically formidable opponents Rome encountered, the legion's discipline and engineering proved decisive. Germanic warriors were large, aggressive, and individually fearless. They were also tactically predictable and had no logistics to speak of. The Roman legion could sustain a campaign for months. Germanic tribes had to disband and go home periodically just to eat. In almost every case, the Roman system eventually produced victory, not because Rome had better individual soldiers, but because Rome had a better organization, better supply, better engineering, and, crucially, better institutional memory. Defeats were studied and incorporated as lessons. Successful tactics were standardized and spread across all legions. The army that fought in Britain had learned from what worked in Spain and North Africa.
No system lasts forever. By the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, the Roman army had changed fundamentally from the instrument that had conquered the Mediterranean. Professional legions had been supplemented and eventually replaced by foederati, Germanic tribal warriors who fought for Rome in exchange for land and money, but had their own loyalties and their own command structures. The road network that had enabled rapid troop movement now also worked in reverse, allowing enemies who had studied Roman logistics to move along Roman roads faster than Roman responses could organize. The supply system that had sustained campaigns became a target. As central authority weakened, maintaining those supply depots and keeping roads repaired required a functioning taxation system. And the taxation system required a functioning government. And the government was increasingly unable to function under the pressure of constant external threats, internal political instability, and economic strain. The Roman war machine did not fall because its soldiers became weak. It fell because the system that sustained it collapsed. And that lesson, that even the most powerful military force in history is only as strong as the system that supports it, has been rediscovered by every great power that has followed. Rome's legions are gone. The empire they built has been dust for 15 centuries. But the principles they operated on, professionalization, standardization, logistics, adaptability, and the systematic absorption of lessons from defeat, are the same principles that every successful military force since has tried to replicate. When historians study why armies win and lose, they keep arriving at the same conclusion. It is rarely about courage. Almost every army in history has had brave soldiers. It is about organization, supply, training, and the willingness to treat defeat not as a catastrophe, but as information. Rome understood that. It is why a city of shepherds on a peninsula in central Italy, with no natural resources, no geographic advantages, and neighbors who wanted them destroyed, ended up ruling a world. If you made it to the end of this video, you think differently about history than most people do. This channel covers the wars, the strategies, and the systems that shaped the world we live in, from ancient Rome to modern Iran. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. The Ottoman Empire episode is already in production, and trust me, you don't want to miss that one.